Ron Zweig's first train was not an O-gauge train.
I had a hand-me-down Lionel standard gauge when I was about 6 or 7 years old. It was a hand-me-down through the family, and I was the youngest. Every time I see a standard gauge set, it was the standard Lionel standard gauge set. It brings back fond memories. We had a neighbor who was a locksmith, but he was also a Lionel dealer. He had a beautiful Hudson under a Christmas tree at Christmas time. My dad had a grocery store, and I would personally deliver their grocery order every week because they'd let me run the train.
Later in life, after Ron was married and his children were grown, the time came to buy a new house. What happened next only happens in the movies.
We went to a real estate agency, and she said, I just got a house on the market. Yesterday I signed the agreement. Nobody has seen it. Why don't we take a look? And my wife agreed, and she said, well, see if they're home. And we came to the house, and the husband was home. He worked out of his home. And we walked in the door, and the husband said to me, let me show you the basement, while my wife and real estate agent looked at the first floor. And I came down here, and it was just the beginning of a model railroad. He was an expert carpenter. He had completed the bench work and had some temporary track down, and that was about it. And that was the part of the hobby that I'm not very good at, the carpentry work. And so that sold me. I came upstairs and I said to my wife, what do you think of the house? She said, it's very nice. I said, let's buy it. She said, you haven't looked at it. I said, I've seen what I want to see. And truthfully, we bought the house at that moment, the first people to look at it. And I bought it because of the layout. I added, some sections to it, but 80% of it was this layout. And the same track plan, just about the way he had envisioned it. The owner was moving to Pennsylvania, and we became pretty good friends, and he was a salesman, and he would come back to this area periodically, and we'd spend a few hours working on the railroad together. And eventually he moved back to the area. He wanted to buy the house back, and that wasn't going to happen. So he would come over 1 or 2 nights a week, and we'd work on the layout together. And eventually he moved out west. And even when he was out west, he would return to this area 2 or 3 times a year, and Walt would stop by and we'd work on the railroad. Or we'd meet at York. He'd come back to York every once in a while. So he has since passed away, but he was the inspiration and the beginning of the layout.
Ron's career was in city government, where he had opportunities to see both good and bad ideas in effect. Ron chose to focus on the good things.
Plato, the great Greek philosopher, once wrote an essay about the perfect city. And to me, I wanted to construct the perfect city. It's organized as if you had a blank piece of land and said, I'm going to create what I think is the perfect city. And it's as a friend of mine said, it looks like a happy place. There are parks, there are people enjoying games and other pastimes. Everything is happy and neat. It's the kind of place you look at and say, gee, I'd like to visit that kind of town. The town has no graffiti, there's no litter, there are people working, keeping it clean, and it's well planned and organized. There's a downtown section containing the stores and all of the commercial activities and restaurants. There's a residential section. And then there's an industrial area. There's a refining plant covering a substantial area of the layout. And then there's the center of the railroad is the railroad facilities, the passenger stations and the various service facilities for the railroad.
While Ron has tried to build a perfect city, which is pretty serious business, some of the business names in this city reveal his sense of humor.
I've got Dr. DK as the dentist, and the casket company we have here is Myra Maines. We have a dairy called the Legendary. The poultry market is Salmonella's. The Iceberg Ice Company is a prominent part of the layout. The auto supply store is owned by Auto Parts. R.U. Knott's Lumber Company. Well, those are a few examples, I guess, that come to mind.
Over at the engine terminal, a Corber roundhouse sits center stage. Lionel post-war locomotives dominate the motive power fleet, and the 105-foot diamond-scale turntable handles the turning chores. Ron uses conventional control to run his trains, using 3 Z4000s and an old Lionel Z transformer. He has tried command control on the layout, but most of his motive power is not command-equipped, and his track plan is not all that complicated. So he has chosen to stay with conventional control to run the trains. It appears to be a good decision, for the trains run just fine. Running trains is a lot of fun, but making new friends is another important part of the hobby. And new friends can be found almost anywhere.
About 20 years ago, I went to see a doctor. I had a hearing problem, and discussing with him, I found out he had an interest in collected O-gauge trains. And I said, well, I have a layout I just started, and you might come over and look at. And he did. And he says, I have another friend who's a physician, and he's got an O-scale layout. Can I bring him over? I said, sure. And ever since then, for the last 20 years, every Monday night, those two doctors and a third one who joined us about 10 years ago, we get together every Monday night and come down here and play with trains and discuss matters of the world, have a late snack, and off they go about midnight. But that's been going on now for 20 years.
Over the years, Ron developed a very unique work ethic for the layout.
One thing I learned from actually it was a hobby store owner who had a very large layout. And he said to me, you must go down and work on your layout every single night, even if it's only for 5 minutes. Because if you don't do that, pretty soon it's 3 nights, 4 nights, 5 nights you haven't been down there and it slips away. When he told me that, I said, I'm going to try that. And ever since I've done that. No matter if I got home at midnight, I would still go downstairs, do something, even if it was just cleaning off some part of the layout, putting tools in order. But every single night I had to come downstairs and do at least one thing.
Ron's enjoyment of the hobby is shared by someone else that is very important to him.
A big part of my satisfaction with this hobby is the fact that my wife supports it and is appreciative of it and very proud of it. I mean, she's always telling people about this great layout. You must come over the house and see what my husband has done. And I think that's extremely important in this hobby, to have family that supports it and doesn't resent it as taking away pleasure that they could have doing something else. And I am really fortunate that my wife is extremely supportive and very proud of the layout.
Ron also has an important key to success.
I think people need to have other interests. I have too many friends who've retired and really have no hobbies, no interests, and I don't think it's healthy. I just see them sitting around, watching TV all day and evening, and then they just go downhill. I wake up each morning looking for what project I'm going to work on.